And why does this generation of kids just turn their back on their parents? Like, I would never treat my parents the way some of the things have been said to me. Just so much entitlement these days.
The number one way to push your kid even further away is to be dismissive. You should be listening instead of pointing fingers. Now, from my perspective as a millennial, from a really high level, this is what it boils down to. Why so much of our generation and those coming after us are distancing ourselves from older generations, including some of our parents. And it has to do with mental health and how we have put a much bigger importance on it, trying to understand it, trying to work on ourselves. And it is often being dismissed by older generations. Here's what a lot of it looks like. There are some pretty unhealthy parenting practices in the 80s and 90s and 2000s and probably before. And I'm under no delusions that we are going to get it perfect. Of course, our kids are going to have problems with the way that we parented them as well. But the fact remains that many of us experience trauma from our childhood. Things like being spanked or being parented with guilt or fear or lies instead of having difficult conversations. And that's something that we're trying to work through, which again is dismissed by older generations. Us being in touch with our emotions, paying attention to our bodies, you dismiss as us being weak. And a lot of the older generation refuses to see us as adults. We're still treated like children, even though many of us are in our 30s, pushing 40. We have mortgages and children. We have decades of experience and careers. And to be completely honest with you, a lot of us have more relevant life experience at this point than the older generations. But you don't want to see that. You still treat us as children. You act like we don't know what we're doing. Which brings me to the third point, and probably the most important. A lot of us are parents. We are trying to heal ourselves so we can be there for our kids. We're trying to parent differently because we see the way that we were parented as kids and we don't care for it. We think there are better ways, and that's what we are trying to do. But again, it's often dismissed by older generations. We get a lot of criticism. So you have an older generation that caused trauma, which has created a dynamic between the two of us that makes us feel uncomfortable around you. You dismiss our attempts to try and heal, and you make us feel like we're weak because we're trying to heal. And then you're getting in between us trying to provide a better life for our children. And I'm sorry, but if you're going to get in between us and our children, 10 times out of 10, we are going to choose our children. And all of that said, I can only try to imagine how painful it would be if when my children became adults, they chose to distance themselves from me further than what is completely normal for someone going out into the world on their own for the first time. It is not something that we take lightly. So when you dismiss it, try and think how serious it must be for us to make the decision to start distancing ourselves from the very people that brought us into this world.
Basically, if you don't know what that lady's talking about, she's saying, I don't understand how kids these days are so entitled and can cut off contact from their parents, and that she would never treat her parents that way. Now, I'm currently in the middle of a very difficult and complicated situation with my family. If you saw my Christmas video, you know what I'm talking about. So I feel like I can speak on this topic from experience. And honestly, much of what I'm about to say is a little harsh, so if you're upset about that, you can go ahead and cry about it later because I really don't care. I don't know if anyone's noticed this, but there is almost like an epidemic of millennial and Gen Z children having complicated relationships with their parents. Like, this is a common theme that's going on right now. I'm not a parent, and I honestly don't know if I ever intend to become one, but the biggest issue that I'm noticing with these parent-child relationships that we're seeing on TikTok, similar to the one that this woman is referencing, is that a lot of these parents, particularly boomers, feel like their children owe them something. And they feel like because they raised them and put food on the table, put a roof over their heads, clothed them, bought them toys as a child, they feel like their children owe them something later on in adult life. And before I even continue this, let me say I am not at all talking about those spoiled ass little bratty ass kids who, when they get cut off at 25, they throw a fit with mommy and daddy. I'm not talking about those kids. Obviously they exist. But when you decide to become a parent, and this is also why I have reservations of becoming a parent myself someday. When you become a parent, you need to understand that your child doesn't owe you shit later on in life. You made the choice to bring them into this world unconsensually. They did not have the choice to come here. And so for you to throw these things in their face later on, right, which a lot of parents do, I raised you. I put a roof over your head. I put food on the table. I sacrificed so much for you. You are the parent who made the decision to bring another human into this world. And providing for and protecting a child is exactly what you do as a parent. Those are not things that your child needs to repay you for later on in life. You may have done the absolute best to your ability to parent and raise your child, but that also doesn't mean that you haven't contributed to their trauma. And a lot of parents just refuse to recognize and acknowledge this fact that you could have been a great parent and still possibly hurt and damage your child in some way. Because it's not that we expect our parents to be unrealistically perfect. It's because a lot of you don't know how to take accountability for the ways in which you may have hurt us, and you feel like we owe you something later on. And I am well aware that being a parent can sometimes be a hard and thankless job, but it is a job that you signed up for willingly.
If I care about somebody and I really desire to have a relationship with them, and they come to me one day and they say, hey, for years, your behavior harmed me and negatively impacted me and made it really hard for me to become a healthy person. And I need you to name that, and I need you to own that, and I need you to apologize to me. I would do everything in my power to not only do those things, but look myself in the mirror and say, wow, I need to change, because obviously what I've done, what I'm doing is not working, and I care about them and I want them in my life. I need to do better. That's accountability. When somebody says you harmed me, we don't get insecure and deflect and gaslight. We say, I'm so sorry. I fucked up. I'm going to do better. Let me dedicate myself to that. So many parents don't do that.
Watch the video that I'm stitching. He made incredible points, but I think it's funny how she goes on to call our generation entitled for setting boundaries and having to cut off abusive parents, while simultaneously feeling entitled to her children's respect simply because she was their parent. Parents often feel entitled to their children and their respect, and they don't see them as human beings. They see them kind of as possessions. They can be abusive and carry on generational trauma, be dismissive, and then be completely surprised when you cut them off and when you don't respect them. Let me give you an example with just how entitled abusive parents can be. My little sister unfortunately passed away from a motorcycle accident right before Christmas time. And she was kicked out by my mom when she found out that she was a lesbian. And then she went to live with her dad in a roach-infested motel. And then he kicked her out when she confronted him about how bad of a dad he was. And she was living on her own. She had no money for food. She was underweight. Her beautiful curly afro turned into thin, barely there hair. And while they knew that she had no money for food or to survive, my mother got a tummy tuck. When she got into the accident and we were all at the hospital, I hadn't spoken to them in years. And my stepdad was saying things that were completely untrue. And I confronted him about that. And he was ready to throw hands with me. My mom came to his defense, even though she cheated on him with his best friend that she had only known for a week, moved him in with 2 daughters in the house. Anyway, I digress. They said, "You're so judgmental. Who are you to judge? You're nobody. You're so judgmental. You didn't even say hi to us when you walked in the door. You didn't say hi to your parents." After all the abuse, after all the trauma, after all they did to us as children, and all that they put us through, they still feel entitled to our respect. Mind-blowing. And then they act absolutely flabbergasted when we have to cut them off because they are extremely toxic for our mental health. This is the generation that says enough is enough. My mental health comes first. I'm not carrying on generational trauma. And if that means having to cut you off, that's what we're going to do. You're not entitled to our respect simply because you kept us alive as children. We didn't ask to be here. Respect is earned.
This video of this parent whose adult children have cut them off or they don't have a good relationship has been circulating my FYP. So let me try to simplify it as best I can. You'll have a lot of millennials who'll talk about the importance of mental health and parenting practices and all that. I am going to simplify it even more. If you are a parent and your adult children want little or nothing to do with you, probably the main reason is you are not caring about how they feel. Certainly, you have probably done an excellent job taking care of them physically. You probably paid for their college, fed them, clothed them, given them all kinds of material stuff. But when your children express their emotions, their feelings, how you have potentially harmed them, despite you having bad intentions or not, you don't want to hear it. It turns into a discussion of right and wrong to you versus validating your adult child's experience. Because feelings are not right or wrong. Feelings just are. And we also understand as millennial adult children that you weren't taught a lot of this emotional intelligence growing up. Neither were we. But we have learned that that is unhealthy. We've all gone to therapy to learn that's not how you interact with other human beings. That's not how you're empathetic and build strong emotional connections with people. And we have found a very strong correlation between being emotionally dismissed from anybody, but more importantly, our parents who are supposed to love us unconditionally. And what really makes it so much worse is that, one, you don't want to hear it, which leads us to believe that you don't actually care about our emotions, but we also know that you're probably incapable of caring. It's also really difficult for you to hear that maybe you weren't a perfect parent and you don't want to take any constructive criticism because when you were a little child, constructive criticism meant that you were bad. And then when videos like this are made, you will see a lot of the people supporting this woman have their comments turned off or they have gone private. They clearly are not emotionally strong enough to listen to other people who are in positions of going no contact with their parents. And in no way is it entitlement to set boundaries and care for your emotional well-being. But the fact is, people are entitled to protect their peace. So certainly estranged parents can support each other, but publicly grieving is not going to guilt trip any adult child to come back to you.
With a lot of emotional abuse. And I remember being a young teenager, maybe 14 or 15, and I forget what my mother and I were arguing about, but I said, I did not ask to be here. I did not ask to be alive. She lost her shit. I think that was especially triggering to her because she had many miscarriages between my older brother and me. And I've had a miscarriage, and I know that that feels awful. However, my statement was still true. I did not ask to be here. I did not ask to be alive. And she was furious at that statement. I got in such deep shit with her about that statement. Because how dare I not be groveling at her feet for her to take care of my basic needs that she's legally required to. And if I ever talk to my kids that way or treat them that way and make them feel like I am doing them a favor by keeping them alive and well cared for, I want somebody to slap me across the face. Because that is some nonsense. I wanted my kids here. I chose to bring them here. I chose to raise them. Anything they need to grow to be a good, functional adult, that's on me and my husband to take care of those things. They don't owe me anything.
Because a few months ago when I made a video about like my feelings towards my biological mom and like all the ways that I feel like she kind of failed me, she sent me a very nasty text, and I will say it in nicer words than she said that she doesn't owe me anything. And I was like, oh, that's news to me. I thought that you birthed me. My mistake. But a radical idea that our generation seems to hold that like other generations just cannot grasp is that kids don't owe parents anything. Parents owe the kids everything because you chose to have us. It was a very non-consensual thing to bring us into the world. So to then throw things in our face like, I fed you, I clothed you, I took you to your t-ball games, and I paid for your freaking prom. Like, yeah, those were things you were supposed to do because you signed up for it. You chose it. We didn't have a lot of options, you know? But I think it is so rich that she is calling our generation entitled for going non-contact with parents who are toxic and can't respect boundaries, when I think it is more entitled to expect your kids to have a relationship with you in their adulthood when they have all the choices in the world and free will, and expect for them to still come around you when you can't respect them and can't apologize and you can't go to therapy. You can't do simple things that they're asking you to do. I'm sure there are lots of bratty kids in this world, but as an adult who encounters so many other adults who have parents who just simply can't apologize, so who can't have any kind of accountability for their actions, I stand with the millennials on this one when we choose to stop talking to you. As a mom myself, I have seen firsthand how difficult it is to be a parent and how I'm making so many mistakes. And that one day I'm just going to hope and pray that they're going to forgive me for these mistakes, because I think that they have every right to go non-contact if I cannot uphold what I'm supposed to be doing as a parent, which is loving them, protecting them, and listening to them, because they are still humans. Yes, I birthed them, but they don't owe me anything. They are human and they have free will and they can make their own decisions. When that day comes, when they're an adult and they can decide if they want to continue having a relationship with me, because that is their right, I hope that I am worthy of having a relationship with them still, because I know that they can choose not to. And that does scare me. And I understand how that's like hurtful for parents, like when you are putting so much work and you feel like you're doing your best, but you have to be willing to listen to them, because it's as simple as listening and saying sorry for a lot of kids. But you guys can't seem to do that. Also, just a thought for this woman, if you're in the baby boomer generation and you have multiple friends whose kids have gone non-contact with them as adults, maybe you are the common denominator. I mean, just a thought.
With you boomers is you love to play the victim card. It's like you guys never did a single thing wrong in your life. You didn't beat your children into submission. You didn't expose your children to dangerous situations or dangerous people. I mean, really, do you guys think about anybody else other than yourselves? Because parents that cultivate healthy, loving relationships with their children do not have this problem. And the worst part is that you guys sit there and just tell people, get over it. It happened so long ago. It's in the past. And yes, the physical, mental, emotional abuse that you put your children through, yeah, it might have happened 20 years ago, but it's still affecting your kids to this very day. Not only them, but everyone that interacts with them. Anyone who comes into their life has to deal with the trauma that you cause. So if your adult children want to take a step back from dealing with you to go and deal with their own mental health, then they are more than entitled to do so. Why, you may ask? Because they don't owe you shit. You decided to bring them into this world. You decided to be a parent. So you have to deal with the consequences of your actions. And if you really want a healthy relationship with your kids, then own up to the shit that you've put them through. The shit that you've said to them. The shit that you've done to them. Because whether you want to admit it or not, it happened. You might not think it's a big deal, but clearly it is to them. Things won't get fixed in a day, a week, a month, maybe not even in a year. But that's why you work on it every single day. You take accountability for your actions in the relationship. We never once expected you guys to be perfect parents. We just wanted you to try, and you couldn't even give us that. A lot of parents couldn't even say sorry. They couldn't even apologize. They're just like, oh, I don't remember doing that to you. I don't remember saying that to you. Like, okay, maybe you don't, but clearly I do. It hurts me. That is why I'm bringing it up. But this whole deny shit isn't going to get us anywhere. And if you've reached that point with your kids where they do not want to talk to you at all, then maybe that's a wake-up call to start working on yourself. Go to therapy. Go talk to somebody and be like, hey, I have all these issues. I want to work on a relationship with my kid, but clearly they are not talking to me right now, so I need to work on myself as a person first. And then you go from there. But sitting here and being like, oh, my kids turned my back on me. Wonder why. And you just sitting there calling them entitled isn't helping the situation either. It just makes them feel like they made the right decision in cutting you out. If you're someone who's thinking about cutting off your parents, or you've already done it, stand your ground. Because if someone isn't going to change for you or fix themselves for you, they don't deserve your time or your energy.
That generations did this too. We just didn't have social media to actively talk about it. So those people were seen as weird or odd for not being in touch with their parents who were in fact alive. I have a family member who's not in touch with their mother and has been on and off for years. And people think it's weird when in fact it's the most normal and the most healthy. He does it to protect himself and his family, because the relative his mom is not good to him. He's done his best for years to try and meet her expectations, but it doesn't matter what he does, it's never enough. If she ever thought it was enough, they would have a relationship.
A lot of great responses and stitches to that video. One person even laid out an actual script that a parent could say out of their face to maybe make a dent in the repair in a relationship with their kid. I haven't spoken to my mom in 3 years, and I can only speak for myself, but I know for a fact that it takes a lot. It takes a lot for a child to cut off contact with their parent or primary caregiver. We don't take that shit lightly, because our role, whether it is healthy or it's supposed to be this way or not, is to receive love. And when that love is not given for any reason in any time, space, reality, we will go looking for it from you. We will beg for it. We'll try to earn it. We'll try to convince ourselves that we're not deserving of it, but we should stick around in the relationship because one day we might. We go to therapy to do the work on ourselves to become the type of person who can withstand a relationship with someone who's abusive, neglectful, ignorant to our feelings, and doesn't give a shit. So after decades, and I mean decades, of trying to find a way to be in relationship with my mom, who was abusive and neglectful and ignorant to my feelings and didn't respect me whatsoever, I was like, okay, I guess I just need to do her work for her. So I wrote a letter to myself from her. In other words, I wrote myself the apology that I would need in order to even start repairing our relationship. And then I gave it to her and I said, I did your work for you. Here you go. This is what I need. I did it for you. All I need you to do is write it in your handwriting and sign your name to it. Which on one hand, I guess could sound like a little manipulative, but on the other hand, like some people, especially in older generations, like they don't have the language, they don't have the tools, they don't have the words. So anyway, blah, 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 it didn't work. But what I realized is that my mom would need to be an entirely different person in order for me to want to have her in my life. At some point, and this goes for a lot of people, not everybody, but sometimes an apology or an earnest, declaration of harm that was caused or mistakes that were made, and even a promise to do better isn't enough. Because sometimes the people who brought us to this earth aren't the right people to be in our life at a certain point. My mom would literally have to be a completely different person. She wouldn't just have to repair harm or change her behavior. She'd have to be a person who has a completely different value set than she does. So I'm sorry to the parents who are feeling a loss and a loss for words and very baffled and confused about why your child isn't talking to you, but you're not guaranteed a relationship with us just because you brought us here. And to anyone who's estranged from their parent, I see you, I love you, and I respect you.
This video because I can't find the original, but I'm gonna explain why I don't speak to either of my parents. I'm 21, I'll turn 22 in March, and it's very recent that I stopped talking to both of them. Throughout my childhood, there was a lot of manipulation, money issues that I just thought we were broke, honestly. But the thing is, I later find out that she has a gambling addiction. And she constantly will sit here and ask me for money, ask everyone else for money, and be like, oh, but I'll give you, if you give me $50, I'll give you $100 when I get paid. And you know what we receive? Zero. Even the times where I don't have a job, she would still nag to me and be like, can you please just send me money? Can you please? She even started asking my fiance and created a whole fake Cash App of my younger sibling to manipulate him into sending money and thinking that it was my younger sibling, but it was actually her. And recently, my younger sibling texted me and told me that they had money in their Cash App, and while they were taking a bath, my mom went on their phone and took all of the money out of their Cash App. Yep. So not only is there money problems, but when I was going through all my depression, when it first started in high school and middle school and stuff like that, I was told that I was basically crazy. When I self-harmed, she would make it about her and be like, do you know how that makes me look as a parent? Which she's completely missing the point, because yes, I'm traumatized by her, but also like depression is just a thing. Like, come on. So yeah, my mom, I don't know what's wrong with her. She has a lot of issues. She is definitely one of the reasons why I am the way that I am. And she's not getting herself any help. So I decided to stay out of it because I quite literally cannot handle the bullshit. All right, now let's start with my dad. My dad was in and out of my life when I was younger. My parents were never together. So that right there should have been like, hey, are we sure we should have a kid? And sometimes my mom did try to like keep me from him. But here's the real thing. When I was younger, and it only took one time, my dad beat me and left bruises, a full handprint mark on my butt for about a week. And I have literally been traumatized and scared of him ever since then. Now, I am definitely grateful because he's bought me my car and he let me live with him after college and all this other stuff. Like, he's given me money here and there, but he barely ever paid child support. And if he did, that's where mom comes in and she lied and was like, oh, he didn't pay child support, so I don't have money. So I don't know the truth there. But that relationship was over before it even started, because that happened when I was 4 and I am almost 22 now and I was still terrified of him. This past June, there was a situation where he cooked me breakfast and I didn't want to eat it because I quite literally didn't feel well. And it turned into a 3-hour long him screaming, slamming, doing the most, telling me I used my mental health as an excuse, that he beat me and he would still do it again, kick me out of the house. So I chose peace, and that means I can't talk to him.
People don't cut their parents out of their life like it's some easy thing to do. When I cut my mom out of my life, it was the hardest thing I've ever done, except for the fact that holding on to my mom with the way she treated me was even harder. It had gotten to the point that I was protecting her and breaking myself. I was bending over backwards for someone who had a severe addiction problem and would blame me when she would lose her home, would blame me for the abuse she would give to me, would blame me for her addiction because she had me. She would go from telling me she loved me to she hated me within a second if I wasn't able to give her money or the things that she needed. I didn't end my relationship with my mother because it was fun. I did it because it was the only way for me to protect myself. It was the only way for me to parent myself and do the things that I had needed her to do for me as a child that she wasn't able to do. Now, luckily, by cutting her out of my life for 2 years, my mom actually finally got it through her head that she couldn't treat me the way she'd been treating me. I'm not telling everyone to go and do this, but for me personally, by cutting her out for 2 years, for the first time ever, she took some accountability, developed some awareness, and we got to a place where we could actually have a conversation without her screaming and cussing at me and telling me she hated me. And we actually got to a really good place in our lives for the first time ever before she later passed away. So when people wonder why someone could cut off their parent, I get questions all the time like, how could you do that? She's your mom. It's like, I did that because she's my mom. Because out of anyone that should treat me kindly or with respect or equal, it should be my mom. I don't have to be treated like I'm a villain and like I'm the worst person from my mother. I don't have to put up with abuse from someone just because she's my mother. I don't have to be stomped on and broken in half because she's my mother. I deserved a good life too. And at the end of the day, just like everyone else, I always wanted my mom. When I had breakups, when I had hard times, I wanted to pick up the phone and call my mom. So not being able to do that was excruciating for those 2 years. But I did that for myself because it was the only way I could heal and I could learn to love myself without having the weight of her telling me how horrible I was for 2 minutes. So when you see someone that's cut off a family member, don't look at them like they're some villain that's enjoying it. No, know that they're a hurting child too, that wants their mom or their parent just like everyone else. But they're doing the big thing that they have to do, and they're taking care of themselves. It is a hard thing to do, and if you've had to do it, I'm proud of you, and don't let someone shame you for it.
And another thing, I really need people to keep the same energy. Don't sit here and get mad at your child or your child's abusive partner when you yourself are just as abusive and toxic. Don't come to talking about you need to leave when you're doing these same things and you still expect them to stay around you. That's not how this works, Karen. That don't fly no more, Greg. Child. The biggest flex of 2023 isn't having all this money. It's not grinding until you're dead. It's not all of that there. It's about getting your healing. It's about getting toxicity out of your life and dealing with those negative traits. It's communicating effectively and not out of a trigger your childhood trauma put on you. If you want to heal, if you want to get past trauma and brokenness, if you want to learn how to parent the right way and keep your children in your life, this is parenting.